What day two receiver would make the most sense for the Cowboys at pick 56? And is there somebody worth trading up for early in the second round? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we've got a chance to watch some day two wide receivers over the last couple of days. Just general thoughts about where you think these day two receivers are. Do you like the group that could be available at 56 and 88 or not really?
At this point, after watching them and kind of checking the consensus board that you've made, I have concerns that they'll be there at 56 and 88. I mean, that's really my concern now is as we start to see more and more wide receivers being pushed up the boards, I think there is a legitimate chance, we'll see, that maybe all three of these guys could be gone if it fell right before 56 rolls.
So let's start with this because you mentioned where they're being ranked. I do this consensus board that takes the top 10 big draft media members, put all their rankings together. As of right now, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, and Jahan Dotson are all ranked inside of the top 27 players for the big media members, which means they're probably all going to be gone by pick 40 at the latest, I would assume. And with the ways the wide receiver market is going, it's really valuable to get that fifth-year option. So you might even see a seventh slip in there. Wouldn't be surprising at all. But today, Landon, we're going to talk about a couple guys that could interest the Cowboys at 56 or maybe in a slight trade-up if you like them that much. Let's start with George Pickens.
Like Jerry spoke this morning, right?
Yeah,
just like Jerry teased it perfectly for us, right?
Yes. Start with George Pickens. He is currently, I believe he's the 8th ranked receiver right now on the consensus board. His ranking overall is 48. Okay. So just ahead of where the Cowboys are picking, but you have guys fall all the time that you're going to have ranked inside your top 50. What did you see from Pickens when you went back and watched the film?
So two of these guys, I don't like to do comparisons like necessarily. Don't find myself to be particularly good necessarily, but two of these guys I have comparisons, and George Pickens is kind of unconventional. I think that George Pickens is the Derek Stingley of wide receiver prospects in this draft. This is a guy who had a great 2019 season, created a ton of buzz early in his career, showed out with Georgia, obviously dealt with the COVID season in 2020, which he played okay. But it was obviously kind of lackluster just because of the general season was lackluster, and then was mostly injured in the 2022 season. I think this very kind of fits the Stingley sort of idea of this is a guy that after his sophomore year, people were like, as soon as this dude's draft eligible, they're going to be a top 10 pick. And then suddenly circumstance happened. Right. So, I got him at 6'3", 195. He had a very small sample size, so we didn't get a lot of SIS notes from him, but SIS liked him a lot. Some of the metrics that they measured him in. He's thin, tall. He's got very long limbs. The thing that kind of concerns me about Pickens is this is, like I said, a guy that we've been watching, in one form or another for like the last 3 years. For as much experience as he has in his game, it's not quite as refined as you would like. Like, I mean,
he didn't get a lot better since his freshman season, right?
Well, specifically, he didn't improve in the parts of his game that are imminently fixable, right? Like the kind of nuance to his route running just never really arrived. It's funny because the other guy, I don't think he compares to him, but I think you compare these two because they had similar kind of college careers as far as like their initial trajectory, right? Is Chris Olave. And look at how much Olave has accomplished in these last 3 years versus what Pickens has. So at least as far as development and kind of getting better. Having said that, like this is a guy who, despite not kind of working on the nuanced part of his game, like there are many elements of his game that came into college like very well baked. I mean, there's a reason that this guy was I think the number one wide receiver prospect in the country, or at least top three. And so the things like he has incredibly reliable hands. Like I don't think I saw any drops. I watched 2 2021 tapes and 1 2020 tape. And he didn't really drop anything. He doesn't drop whether it's like the simple stuff or the more difficult acrobatic catches where I think that's where he really thrives. Right, he's this guy who is can make the highlight catch. He displays an impressive combo of body control and strong hands that is likely going to put him on ESPN. He's got good speed. I think his time speed was a little bit surprising to me because I don't know that I see that, right? But I think he's got good enough speed. And if he gets on top of a cornerback, he understands how to stack defenders and get the best advantage of his leverage. Like I said, it concerns me not only that his route running kind of never developed too much, but the way that manifests itself on tape is that you don't see a guy who is routing himself open a lot, right? Like when he's wide open, it feels like he's schemed open at times. And there's other times when he's making a ton of contested catches, and if you get the ball near him, he's likely going to make the catch. But I hate to put this on him, but I got real kind of strong Laquan Treadwell vibes at times from him. In the sense that like a good percentage of his catches that I saw were people were draped on him, or he was able to kind of out body position those guys. I don't know that that's a way that you consistently win in the NFL the way you can in college. The last thing I put, he should be very valuable near the red zone, because I do think, again, he understands how to make that highlight play. He understands how to play above the rim. He makes those kind of catches all the time. Where does he win? He's a big play receiver waiting to happen. I think if he can find a way to kind of refine his game a little bit more in the way that he didn't really in college, I think he could become a great number one receiver. At the very least, I think he comes in as a guy who can make some plays for you. My unanswered question for him is, can you get more consistent technique? And I think that's really the issue, right? It's not that he doesn't understand the technique. It's that you don't see his with Olave, he runs all his stems exactly the same. Yeah. I don't see that with this guy. I think he needs to just find a little bit more consistency in his technique. And I think that will promote consistent overall play from him.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The first game that I really noticed him was that bowl game in 2019 against Baylor, where he just was a monster, right? And I remember sitting on my couch watching that game thinking, that's a top 10 pick all day long. Yeah. Never really got better the next year. But then he played the bowl game against Cincinnati. I think it was on New Year's Day or something like that. And he had a monster game in that one. So you can see the flashes of what makes him so appealing. I wrote down two names of players. One more the body type and one more the style of play. The body, do you remember Chris Henry from the Bengals?
Sure, yeah.
6'3.5", but really skinny, that sub 200-pound receiver, but down the field, athletic. I could see that. In terms of play style, see a little bit of Roy Williams in him. Kind of a bigger vertical guy, but a lot of it's going to be contested catches, but on the outside, not really super dynamic after the catch. Like, that's just not George Pickens' game, right? No. You're throwing him the ball down the field, hoping that he makes ridiculous catches, because he does it pretty often. Do you think he fits with Dallas?
His game is very similar to Michael Gallup's.
That's the issue, right?
And that's why I don't necessarily love it, is because I feel like one of the things the Cowboys needed to get away from is that they had three receivers who kind of had a lot of overlapping skill sets, right? So I think that Pickens would be kind of more the same. I mean, he's not like Cooper necessarily, but
he's not a quick route runner at all like that, right?
But if anything, like it's just kind of more on the Gallup side of that sort of overlapping skill set. So I think you've already got a guy that you like, and I think that frankly, I think Gallup may be more dynamic than Pickens is.
I really like Pickens. I really do. I could see him being a very, very good number 2 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe a 1-1. Just not sure Dallas is the right team for him
Yeah.
to be. I think he would be fine. If the Cowboys drafted him, I have no doubts that he would be a fine receiver, but I actually think he has a higher ceiling in other places.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just based on like what they're looking for versus what they've got, he's one of the few guys that doesn't have a skill set that appeals to you when
Yeah.
you kind of look at your current stock of wide receivers.
Now, if he goes to Green Bay, I can see him being
Yeah.
he's not going to be the Devontae Adams receiver for that, but could he be a better version of Marquez Valdez-Scantling? The deep threat receiver who's also big and can make acrobatic catches. Sure. Just again, I like him, just not sure he's a great fit for Dallas. All right.
I agree.
Yeah. So if he's at 56, would you take him? But is he one that you'd be willing to trade out for or not really?
I would feel less better. I would feel less excited about being a trade up. I mean, I could understand it, because I do think that there is wide receiver 1 upside here. I do think that he can give you something. I think that, we're kind of beggar can't be choosers situation. I mean, beggars can be choosers like before the draft, because we talked about the whole pool of these guys. But if a lot of these other guys were taken, and the choice was, to trade up to get him or wait until the 3rd round to potentially see what's left at wide receiver, I could easily see why you would want to trade up for a guy like Pickens because he's a good player.
Sure. I think I'm okay just letting the board kind of come to you at this one. And I actually think he's going to go much higher than what people think. I've seen him mocked in first rounds. Seems like he's probably going to be a top 40-ish pick. And I don't think the Cowboys are going to trade up for Pickens. It's just my
again, I think it's like Stingley, right? Where we've just talked, like there was just so much bad press for so long that now that we're all kind of going back to why we originally liked the player, he's actually going to get a little bit of a bump because people are going to go back to 2019 and go, this is what we saw in this guy. Yep. He could still be this guy.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lens, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays include lost and broken protection on every single pair, and they will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay absolutely nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. And exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That is the promo code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. All right, let's talk about Skye Moore from Western Michigan. It feels weird to talk about Skye Moore without mentioning Jeff Kavanaugh. He likes him a lot. I like him not quite that much, but what do you think, Landon?
Well, I mean, his reputation definitely preceded him. Thanks to Kavanaugh for sure. Not breaking news here. He's short with he's got decent length for his height, and he's got very big hands for a guy that's 5'9". He's got the 10.25 inch hands, which I think you see that in his game. He's very reliable with catching the football. Mm-hmm. And he's got kind of a thicker lower half. So he's got 195, he's almost 200 pounds, and at 5'9", a lot of that's in his legs, which is good because that
looks like a running back almost, right?
Yeah, he does. He looks like a running back. He breaks tackles like a running back, low center of gravity, difficult after the catch. He played inside and outside for Western Michigan, but really should probably project more towards the slot and then potentially as a Z receiver. I think he can play outside in the Z role. I would not want him playing in the X necessarily, though. I will say I was really impressed with some of his releases. I thought he has some really nice release moves that I think could help him. I just think that being on the line of scrimmage against NFL physical athletes, he may not make it off. He may not get the opportunity to use a lot of the stuff that you saw in college. He's got lightning quick acceleration and extreme suddenness. And because of that, he's a jab step king. Basically, defenders are so worried about his initial speed that they compensate for his very savvy fake. So he'll throw a jab step. Defenders will over pursue to that angle. He'll burst back to the other side, and because he's so quick in those first few yards, there's no way for them to recover.
Right.
Good body control. He understands how to twist his body to react to the ball, so he has good reactive athleticism, which is important for wide receivers when, especially smaller wide receivers, because they they don't have the same catch radius. They need to be able to react to go to where the ball is if it's not quite on target. He didn't have a huge route tree that I saw. It was kind of a limited number of routes, but he had a good understanding of those routes and understood kind of the nuance of each one, understood the subtle push off at the top of the stop routes, just understood how to sell the fakes ins and outs on multiple moves. So he has kind of a more complete knowledge of how to run the routes that he ran than I kind of expected from a guy coming from a small school. Has all the traits and history. I mean, like, it's crazy if you're building a player for like a slot receiver. It's like they collected all the kind of lore around slot receivers and put it in there. I mean, this is a former running quarterback in high school. Like, I mean, this is basically all those slot guys you've ever heard. They were all ex-quarterbacks. They understand the game at a very high level. They understand the concept. They understand their roles in the offense. This is that guy in spades, without a doubt. Where does he win? Without a doubt, it's sudden speed slot. I mean, he's a guy that is just like, extreme burst guy. His change of direction isn't like elite, especially for his size, but he's so quick in his first few steps that by the time he's changing direction, you're already trying to recover. My unanswered question for him is he limited to alignments where he is off the line of scrimmage because of his size, because of the not elite change of direction? Will guys who can get up in his face and press him always continue to cause him issues in the NFL, or can he develop into a three position wide receiver?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. So a couple of names that I wrote down. I think if he hits the top end of his ceiling, you're getting a Randall Cobb type of player, right? Randall Cobb coming out of Kentucky was that same way. Former NFL or former college quarterback that also played running back, really dynamic with the ball in his hands, but really a slot only, kind of coming into the NFL. I think a more realistic player comp is Devin Duvernay coming out of Texas a couple of years ago. Duvernay had almost across the board the same measurables. He actually was a little bit better in the shuttle drills, but in terms of explosion, 40-yard dash, that's kind of what you're looking at here. So my question for you is, where do you draft probably a sub 5'10" slot only receiver in today's NFL? Because it feels like to me, this isn't to take away from Skye Moore. This is just more of a general conversation. It feels like you can find these guys in day 3, or you can get him. Look at the free agent market right now. Oh my gosh, you can get a slot receiver for, a veteran slot receiver for nothing right now. Do you have to draft these guys at 56?
I think that what you're drafting when you're getting a guy like this is an element of the deep game that you don't normally get with some of the older veterans, especially the older guys.
I agree with that. Yes, like Juju Smith-Schuster, Jarvis Landon, they're not giving you speed anymore, right?
Yeah, they've got the quickness to get open. They still understand how to run routes versus zone, how to get open versus man. I think the difference here is that this guy can beat coverage, can get down the field. He has value as a down the field receiver. He's not, that's not like necessarily the feature part of his game, necessarily.
Well, it's not like CeeDee running seam routes from the slot, right? You're not. I mean, you might be able to get a few of those every year, but that's not really his strength.
But he can do it. I think that's it's a tool that he has in his bag, right?
It's different than Cole Beasley as a pure slot receiver.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. It's like he is like a Duvernay, Cole Beasley type, except the extra benefit is that he can give you speed to go down the field, which I think that's the element that means to me that he can also play the Z, right? Like he can also be that motion man. He can also play outside because he has speed to threaten you on the outside. That means you can do some of the 9 routes with the stop, the go routes with the go stop, kind of constraint, right? So
Sure.
you can keep outside corners kind of guessing. I think he has value as more than a slot receiver, which is probably why he will go in the 40s, late 40s,
40s,
top
50s. Yeah, we'll
of,
say
of the
40s,
early
50s.
50s.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that gives you the kind of added benefit that you don't normally get from these types of slot receivers.
Yeah, so currently right now on the consensus board, he is ranked at 49 overall. So yeah, I think anywhere between 35 and 60 is probably his range, just depending on what teams like. Our team's going to be looking for a slot receiver with a little bit of speed from a smaller school. Maybe. I would not be shocked, though, if there's 8 receivers that are drafted ahead of him because teams are looking for a little bit more size. Maybe they feel like, hey, we could take Calvin Austin or Wan'Dale Robinson around later and get, for the most part, let's say 95% of that production. I like Skyy Moore a lot. If he's the pick for the Cowboys at 56, I'll be happy. I just kind of feel like that's where he probably should go, right?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe you're a little bit higher on him than I am.
I think that the difference is that this is the guy that kind of is the rule that we keep talking about, where teams are looking at these wide receivers differently. And I don't mean differently from us. I mean differently from each other. So all it takes is one team to really not care about his height or the size and have a real plan for him to take him at, 40 or 42.
Sure.
So I think that's the only caveat there, is that we got to remember that we can't look at this through a universal lens. These teams are going to view these guys very differently.
Yeah, I just think in a vacuum, though, more teams are going to be looking for the outside receivers than slot receivers, right? Or guys that are pure slot receivers. And I know that you mentioned that Skyy Moore could maybe do some Z stuff, but
that's not what he's probably going to be drafted for. Yeah,
he's probably going to be drafted to be an instant starter in the slot, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Again, I like him. I don't like him as quite as much as some of the other receivers in the class, but if that's the pick for the Cowboys at 56, I would have no complaints at all. But I think it makes a lot of sense because you have Gallup on the outside, you have CeeDee Lamb who can kind of float back and forth. You have James Washington this year, who's an outside receiver. You probably do need somebody in the middle of the field that's a little bit, quicker, maybe with a little bit more home run speed, who is good after the catch. So I do think it makes some sense for Dallas. All right, we've got one more receiver we want to talk about. But before we do that, let's tell you guys about Built Bar. This time of year, almost everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not us. We are sticking to ours to eat better thanks to Built Bar. And it's because it's really easy. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs. Plus, they have 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar that has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. And frankly, it's not even a contest. They've got so many great flavors, including mint brownie, coconut almond. And the new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious with new flavors coming out all the time. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 at built.com. All right, Landon, the next guy that we're going to talk about, Christian Watson from North Dakota State, currently on the consensus board, wide receiver 10 with a rank of 55. Just saw a mock draft from Mel Kiper Jr. today where he went 22 to the Packers, which tells you what you need to know about this draft class in general. But what did you see when you turned on the film and saw Christian Watson?
Man, I liked Christian Watson. I of these three, this is my favorite, I think. And honestly, this is the guy that I would be the most surprised if he were in striking distance of the Cowboys, because
at 56.
At 56. Yeah. 56. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted him at 24, you could probably get him there, but that may be a little bit rich. I see a tall, long-limbed athlete, but he's skinny all over the place. Like he's just skinny everywhere. He lined up all over, including in the backfield at times. He's 6'4", 208, 32 and 3/4 inch arms. So he's got long arms. He ran a 4.36 with a 1.45 10-yard split. which is ridiculous, but
Yeah.
almost as ridiculous, I think, is that he's 6'04", 208 pounds, and he ran a 6.96 3-cone.
Yeah.
And that shows up in his tape because he's got good flexibility. He runs with a nice forward lean. He plays with a good pad level, but he has a rare combination of quick feet while being a long strider, which is something you don't see very often, which means he can build up quick. He can get speed quick. He can build up, kind of that fifth gear as he's getting down the field, but he can also get in and out of his breaks really cleanly because his feet chop is very, very nice. He has shocking acceleration for a wide receiver his size. It's there. You can see it. And part of you wonders, and that's kind of the whole thing you do while you're watching a player for North Dakota State. You're in the back of your mind is like, well, competition. Who's he playing? What's the competition, right? And I have to say that I was thinking about it the other night, because I don't watch as much college football as I'd like to. It's odd that I've seen more North Dakota State versus Montana State games than I have, I don't know, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have come into the NFL from those two schools, right?
It's crazy. So, I think it's nuts. Now, he needs some route refinement. He gets away from guys on tape, but again, considering who he's playing against, it needs to be more at times. He had 12 drops over the last 2 years, and I think it was 16 total for his career. That's a lot of drops. So that's, and I think that has to do.
It's a lot of technique for me. I just don't think he's got a lot of refinement that needs to happen there.
I absolutely agree. I will say this though, he knows his assignments. He understands the scheme and understands how he's getting open in the scheme. North Dakota State, I think people forget this, but they run a very complicated kind of pro style West Coast offense. So you have to understand what you're doing versus man versus zone. Like that's not an easy job for the wide receivers that are in those programs. Like I mentioned, lower level of competition that he went against, but he doesn't go down easily. He can take on indirect hits and he keeps his feet. And again, the thing to me that kind of really makes me, I had tempered when I wrote this report, which was very early on, I had very tempered expectations, and I even made a note, make sure to circle back on this player after the Senior Bowl and Combine, because you almost need those two events to kind of place their athleticism in the kind of pantheon of the rest of these players, right? So I thought that his Combine and Senior Bowl performances, obviously, he blew it out of the water. He was incredible. I think he was the North wide receiver of the week or something like that.
Yep,
I mean,
he
did very, very well. And I mean, I remember watching the practice tapes, and he was very good in those two. My comparison for him, and let me see if you can get this. I think he's a taller Miles Austin. Because I think he doesn't quite have the lower body power that Miles Austin had by the end of his career. But I think if you talk about the fact where he wins, right, he's a big deep threat who is a big playmaker. The issue is consistency with his hands, which was kind of our problem at times with Miles Austin as well. Where does he win? Big play, deep threat. I think this is a guy who has huge upside, maybe as much as anybody in this class at wide receiver. Unanswered questions. How will he react immediately to a change in competition? I think even with the Senior Bowl and Combine, there still is another level to seeing how these guys run routes versus NFL man coverage, which is, even another level when you're talking about coming from Georgia or Alabama to the NFL.
My comp, I wrote down too. I think because of the deep threat stuff, he reminds me a lot of Martavis Bryant, who played with the Steelers 2015 to 2017, where you're just 6'4", 205 pounds, and you're skinny, but you are such a long strider that you could just pull away from guys. Now, if he hits his ceiling, could he be like a Sidney Rice type of receiver in the NFL? Maybe. I think that's very possible for him. I think this is the type of receiver you draft if you're trying to maybe go all in 2023 and 2024. Because there's other receivers like Skye Moore, for example, they're just going to be able to come in and play and contribute right away. I don't know how much Christian Watson's going to be able to play right away for the Cowboys. If they draft him at 56, I honestly don't know. He might be their fourth receiver because it's going to take him a long time to get caught up to the speed of the NFL and to get used to beating press coverage because he really never did that at all at North Dakota State. But you can see it. So this is the guy that you, of the three that we're talking about, this is the guy that you would probably gamble on, right?
This is the guy that I would be the most excited about. And I don't disagree with what you're saying that I think as far as what they're going to be able to give you this year, let's this is one of the this is the only one of the only guys in that kind of toppish tier that I don't think is necessarily a for this year pick. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
I think he gives you something, but not a huge start.
Of these three receivers, which one do you feel the most comfortable about contributing at a fairly good level this year?
Skye Moore, because I think
I agree with you.
I think because his skill set is such that it can be leveraged much easier than some of trying to force Pickens into a situation that he's not going to be better than Gallup or Lamb at. There are situations where Skyy Moore is a better fit to kind of be a jet sweep guy, slot receiver, gadget out of the backfield.
Get the ball in his hands, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which one do you think the Cowboys will like the best? Because part of me still wonders, are they going to really take a North Dakota State guy high because they just don't like to take small school guys that high in the draft?
I mean, I think Pickens is the guy that they would grade the highest, but I think that's because that's the prototype that they've been looking for a long time. And if the idea is that they're trying to find more of what they've got, then Pickens is your guy. But I think that if you're looking to, again, I think it's Sigmund Bloom who came up with this term, and I'm probably misappropriating it, but I want a basketball team that looks like, I want a wide receiver that looks like a basketball team, that has a variety of skills, a variety of heights, that can do different things. I think the problem the Cowboys had at different points last year is that they had 4 or 5 of guys that had slightly different skill sets, but frankly were all basically the same type of receiver.
Don't disagree. These guys are all interesting. Would not be surprised if all 3 are gone before the Cowboys pick at 56, but I wouldn't be surprised either if 1 or 2 of these guys were available to them. I probably like Pickens the best, but I like Skyy Moore the best for the Cowboys. But I can see, I think Watson has the highest upside, which makes these 3 receivers so fascinating, Landon.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, that was good. We touched on a couple guys that could be options for the Cowboys in round 2. Maybe we'll have to do another show before the draft starts where we can talk about some receivers late 2nd round, 3rd round. I know some people want us to talk about Alex Pierce from Cincinnati, Khalil Shakir, Calvin Austin, Wando Robinson, John Mechie from Alabama. Maybe we'll try to fit in a show here over the next couple of weeks before the draft gets here. But thank you guys for tuning in. You can download the show wherever you get your podcast. Landon, we have a special show for everybody on Thursday night. We should mention that.
Thursday night, guys. We're going to do a live mock draft on the simulators. I think we may bounce around between which simulators, but 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Am I getting that right? Yes.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got
it. Make sure you check us out at the YouTube channel. I think it's youtube.com/C/Locked On Cowboys. And we will be going live. So we'll take your questions from the chat. It will influence our picks. Or at the very least, we'll let you virtually scream at us for not making the picks that you like. So please join us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel while you get the chance to.
Absolutely. Follow the show at Locked On Cowboys. Follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys back here for our regular show on Thursday. And of course, the mock draft simulation on Thursday night. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time.